Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for joining today on a Saturday from the comfort of your homes. I'm really excited to be presenting today and be talking about one of my favorite areas of interest. So I hope you enjoy the session. And um, I myself am a fan of build sort of events which are very innovative and where some new tool or new technology stack is announced. And what can be more exciting than that for developers, right? So I'm going to be talking mostly about that. So the topic that I'm going to be talking about today is how to be super productive with Node.js and Studio Code. Now, this seems to be a very simple topic, maybe, covering basics of Node.js and how to be working with Visual Studio Code, but it's not just that. When we dive right into the presentation, you'll discover more things, more about new tools, and, the easy way of doing things and quickening your development process. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. Before I start, a bit about myself. My name is Nishu Goel, and I work as a software developer. Most of my work revolves around all the front-end technologies, with the most of my focus on Angular and React front-end technologies. And before I start talking about the session, I would really like to thank Anbu and the whole organizing team for doing this and gathering all of you here. That's why we are doing this session. Okay, so my session today looks mostly like this. I'm going to be talking about Azure Static Web Apps. So this is one of the tools that was announced at Build 2020, and it aims to and has already made the lives of developers, mainly web developers, or not just web developers actually, very simple, very easy. And we'll also see how you can you can quicken your development process using Visual Studio Code, with Visual Studio Code being our favorite IDE forever, right? We just don't want to step out of our Visual Studio Code, which is our favorite IDE, and do whatever is possible from the IDE. Now, this is the aim of Static Web Apps extension as well. So we'll get into the code and we'll see how you don't need to step out of your IDE and do everything possible from within the IDE and get your application deployed. So we'll look into how we can do that. Then we'll also, during the demo, we'll also see how you can leverage Azure for all the free services of Azure, and do your whole setup of your application, build it, develop it, test it, deploy it, and actually handle the database as well. You don't need to pay anything for that, all free. And we as developers totally love that, don't we? So now, I was thinking that there'll be, should I be talking about these topics, or should I just show you the code and, you'll be able to understand that? And I figured out that there's very less words, which can explain these topics to you. And it's mainly all the practical stuff that we'll be doing, which will help you understand what and how, these extensions or these tools really make our lives as developers really easy. So most of this session you'll see a lot of demo going on, and that'll be explaining all these different parts of the all the different phases in the agenda that you see here today. So uh, starting with Azure App Service Static Web Apps. So this is one of the tools that was announced at Build 2020, and the aim of this is to develop your web applications, static web applications to be precise, and integrate it with the backend for maybe your CRUD operations. For those of you who don't know what is CRUD, it's create, read, update, and delete. Basically, all your database operations dealing with APIs and stuff. So the Static Web Apps tool allows you to build your front-end applications with the integration with the backend, and then also deploy it to your Azure portal, just like an Azure pipeline with CI/CD, the continuous integration and continuous deployment also happening. And this uses GitHub Actions, which was again, announced a little before Microsoft Build 2020. So as I have mentioned here, static front-end application, what does that even mean? So if you are into web, you might know that JavaScript is currently ruling the world of web applications, right? And there are so many frameworks out there that allow you to easily and efficiently build your web applications, be it Angular, which is the JavaScript framework, or be it React, which has a virtual DOM and makes it really easy for you to build your flexible and fast, lightweight web applications. So many frameworks out there which help you and allow you to build static front-end applications, and integrating it with the backend sometimes is a task for especially newbies, right? We don't really, it feels like a full stack thing to us that, okay, I'm doing the front end, somebody else will do the back end for me, and integration with the API and all, quite a task. Well, not really with this extension coming in, and you'll see how simple it is to do all at one place within your favorite editor. Yes, within your favorite editor, and just deploy your application to a portal. So all of this sounds very exciting, but when you actually do it, you'll realize how simple also it is to do. Now, the second item that I mentioned in the agenda was to, quicken your development process with Visual Studio Code. Now, what that really means is that if you look at it from a larger perspective, right, its first step is to build your front-end application, which is develop your front-end application, the code, the UI code that you write. The next step is to integrate it with any of the backend services. For example, maybe integrating with an API that gets you the data from your, for example, GitHub repository. And then the final step in your process is the DevOps bit, or it's an ongoing step, you can say. So when DevOps comes into picture, you need to have version control for your code where you maintain your source code. Then this version control also should have CI/CD running. You should have continuous integration. You should have testing done there. You should also have continuous deployment of your application, right? So that's where GitHub Actions come into picture. And you'll see how Visual Studio Code takes care of all these operations. Although these three sound very, different things. Static front end, mainly talking about web, the web frameworks, Azure functions talking about Azure portal and the functions that we have inside it to deal with the backend services. Then GitHub, which is a different tool altogether, and using the GitHub Actions, the actions part of GitHub tool to be dealing with the continuous integration of our code. So all these three different things coming together within Visual Studio Code, and making the process really seamless for you. So this is where I will be giving you a walkthrough of what we'll be actually doing in the demo. So as you saw in the previous slide, the first step is to build a static front-end web application. You can use any of the frameworks in here for a quick and just a walkthrough of things. I'll show you a create React application, which is the basic create React app. And when you open the first, the default application, this is the landing page that you see on your React application. And we'll be doing a similar application, which is just a create React app application. And when you do that, the next step is to integrate it to the backend. Now, when backend comes into picture, if you're a backend user, if you've worked with Node.js or GraphQL, you might be familiar with, an architecture where you have one code base and you have the API folder which deals with all your backend operations. Then you have your front-end code. It can be React code or Angular code or whatever. Now, when you want to get your operations working, or you want to use Azure functions to, deal with your backend services, you can actually use this extension that you see here, which is Azure Functions. And it really helps and makes your task really easy to get your backend integrated. For example, I don't know where to paste the API folder, where to place it in my architecture of my application, right? I am totally a newbie in the backend stuff. So I don't even want to take chances by, putting the API folder maybe in the SRC folder. Do we place it there, or do we place it outside the SRC folder? I don't know. So to avoid all that confusion, Azure Functions really come into the picture and really help you with that. So you would just install this, and next step would be to get any of your code working. So if you see here, using Azure Functions, we'll be seeing how you get this API folder that you see right now along with your front-end code. So you have not created anything here. It's Azure Functions doing it for you. You have an API folder now. You didn't know where to place it, but now it's placed with the help of Azure Functions, right? And you see that there's one folder which is called Get GitHub Avatar. And this contains the code to be dealing with one of the APIs that gets you some data back from the API and integrates with your front-end code. So that's how your backend is also integrated. This particular API folder is the backend code for you for your React application, basically. And those two go hand in hand. The next step would be to connect to Azure portal, because if I go back a few slides, you saw here that first step is to build the front end. The second step is to get your backend working either yourself or with the help of Azure functions. The next step would be towards the DevOps side of it. Now you want a source control, a version control for your source code. You want to deploy your application. You also want that whenever you push a code, the code is, built and then deployed, and you always have the latest code on production, for example. That's where CI/CD come into picture. So for that, your next step should be to connect your application to Azure portal, right? And this is something it would look like. Now, this is a step that would come further on, but if you look at it, you'll have an application like this, and you choose a resource group for your application, you choose the location for it, you would choose various resource providers. We'll look into all of that. And then you finally want to push it to GitHub and deploy to Azure. But is there a thing that you notice? I'm talking about GitHub, I'm talking about Azure, but I see all the snapshots of just Visual Studio Code. Nothing related to GitHub here, nothing related to Azure here. That's because with the help of this extension that we were talking about, static web apps, Azure static web apps, if you don't have that already, you should just check it right now and get it installed for you in your Visual Studio Code, because your task will be totally easy. And you see how using the extension, you're using your GitHub, you're pushing your code to GitHub and deploying it to Azure. And you'll also see that how it would ask you to whatever name you want to give to your Azure, the instance that you'll be using on your Azure portal. Here I've given create static web app and Goel, right? And if I go back a few snapshots, few slides, you see here check React static and Goel. This is exactly the name that I've specified from Visual Studio Code in here to be giving to my Azure instance of my application. And since you also need to select a location for the new resource that you're building, Visual Studio Code is asking you the location. You don't need to go to the Azure portal. You don't need to specify that, okay, I want to go with Central US, or for example, East US 2, or any other location. You don't need to go to the Azure portal to do that. It is integrated within Visual Studio Code with the help of the extension. So once you do that, once you select the location in here on the step, you'll get this option, you'll get this prompt of showing the actions, because once this deployment has been done, you will see that now your application has gone into the phase of CI/CD. It's, the pipeline is building. If you've worked with Azure DevOps before, you might be aware of the pipeline concept, how whenever you push a code and it's integrated with whichever branch is, dealing with the deployment of your code, the pipeline runs, the build job and the deploy job, they run, and then your code is finally deployed to production, right? So in here, when you finally deploy it from here, the next step, it would take you to GitHub under the Actions tab. So do you see this tab here, Actions tab? And under this, you will see you have the build and deploy job running. This is exactly like pipelines. This works exactly like pipelines. So your CI/CD is running here. Once this is done, you can go to the Azure portal and look for whatever the URL is of your new application that you've just deployed. When you go to that URL, in my case, if you see here, it is Gentle Bush and some numbers in there. When you go to this particular URL, you should be able to see this application that you had on the front end, which was just the landing page of your React application. So, and it is there. You see how you're using the URL from Azure portal where you have deployed your React application, and your React application is running here. Now you can obviously use a lot of integrations with the backend, but this simplifies your process really, right? You can see you developed your web application, you integrated it with the backend, you also started the DevOps side of it, and you started the CI/CD for your application. It whenever you're pushing the code, it deploys to the URL that is there on your Azure portal. So yeah, that's pretty much the process that you'll be exploring today while we code all of this. And that is it. That just jumps in right into deploying your application on prod. So I'll go back here now, close the slides for some time, and let's go to the terminal. This is my terminal here, And the first step for me is to let's go very step by step. What is the first step? To create a front-end application, a static front-end application, right? So inside here, let me just check what is in here. Okay, so let's just clear this. I want to create a front-end application, so I'll use npx create react app. If you don't have the create react app extension, I mean this package in here to create any of your React application, you can just use npx, which means that it would link to npm, get the create react app working without having to install it inside your system. So I've not installed it as a dependency, I've not installed it as a package, but I'm using npx to link to create react app from npm.js or .org website where your all your package repository. And I want to give it some name. So let's just call it MS Build 2020. This is the name of my application. So npx create react app and the name of my application, right? Now, this would take some time to be, creating this application. In the meantime, what I would like to show you is you can actually get the extensions in the meantime, right? So let me just take it to the right of the screen. Yeah, so while this happens, let's go here inside Visual Studio Code. This is the extensions part. If you're actually doing it with me, I would really recommend that, because the best way to learn something is to by actually doing it, right? So I go to the extensions thing here, and the first thing that I get to that I need to get into my Visual Studio Code is to get the new extension that we have for static web apps. It shows nothing. It does show Azure static web apps, right? So let me go back. Let's see all of it from here. And as you see, it's in preview right now because, we want to, let's just go back. Yeah, because we want, the team wants to see how it's helping developers. And then finally it comes live. So in preview, you can see how Azure Static Web Apps extension allows you to create your application, allows you to integrate it with the backend. It authorizes your VS Code to use GitHub, and then lead you to GitHub Actions to be running the continuous integration on your application, and finally deploying it onto wherever you want to deploy it. In this case, Azure, right? So I have that already installed. If you don't have it installed, you'll see a button like this to install your Azure Static Web Apps. Install that. That's first step. When you do that, you'll see this Azure icon here. So you go here and you can see the Static Web Apps preview thing here. This comes when you install your Static Web Apps, Azure Static Web Apps extension. Now, we're not inside a project right now because this is just to show you that, how you can get different extensions. In the meantime, when our application is still building, where is that? So yeah, let's just get it in the same desktop. It is still building. So in the meantime, what we would like to do is get some other extensions. We have gotten static web apps, which was the first and foremost extension that was really important. The next thing is to get Azure functions, because yeah, you might want to deal with the functions, Azure functions, to get your any of your backend code to be running. So yeah, we go back here, not here, inside here. Yeah, so if you go to Azure functions, you can see the first extension that comes here. I already have that installed. If you don't have it, you'll see this kind of a button to install it. Install Azure functions. You will see how you get this option to get the different functions inside your applications, and it would create a folder for you, whichever you want, and then you can actually run your Azure functions from there. So this is second thing which is important. Now, the third thing, if you're dealing with database, right, and you want to check on all the results that are the operations that are happening in your database, you can actually get the Azure database extension and keep a check on your database without going to Azure databases or Cosmos DB, right? You can just get this extension form here, install it, and this would give you, like this. You will see it here, and this would give you access to all your tables, all your queries inside your tables and everything, and makes it very easy to deal with your databases, right? Especially for people who are not, in the backend, not into backend, have never dealt with queries, tables, SQL, Cosmos DB. So Visual Studio Code does it for you. That's the next thing you want to get. And okay, so whatever next thing comes into the picture, we'll install it right away. We have Azure Functions, we have static web apps, we have databases in case you need to integrate with any of the database. And this is exactly at the right time that our application is done. So you see here, our application is built now. If I check what all applications are there, I can see MS Build 2020 application is in here. So I'll go inside my application and let me just clear it. You can see inside this now. I want to open it inside my Visual Studio Code. Let me just close this and I'll open it here. And I also want to run it right away. So I'll just do yarn start. I'm using yarn package manager. So I'm opening it in the code, Visual Studio Code, and running it right away. So when this happens, I have Visual Studio Code opened here. Okay, this does take some time. Well, yeah, it is here now. Now you see this is all our front-end code that we need for a basic React application. It has the public folder, which contains all the static assets for you. For example, the logo or the index.html. Then you have this src folder inside which if you want service worker for the offline rendering of your application. This is basically about when the internet ditches you in between and you want to, show some customized message on your application. You would use service workers, PWS, progressive web apps. All of these help you to make your application really responsive and really, be flexible with different scenarios. That service worker. Then you have index.js, which has the main code for your application. App.js is the main file from where your application starts. You can see the main code for your landing page is written here. It has the edit src, whatever code you'll see on the application. Let's just go here and see. Okay, so it says, now this is a good error for you to understand different scenarios. Again, it says that something is already running on port 3000 because I might have another application running there. So I would just say yes to run it on another port, and it would open the application on 3001 instead of 3000 now. And let's see what opens up. Now, I have not changed anything in my React application. This should be the first landing page that we saw in one of the snapshots in the slides. So let's just wait for it for some time. And in the meantime, as you see here, this is all the front-end code. I have nothing related to API. I have nothing related to the backend or CRUD operations, right? Now, if you go to this Azure icon in here, my next step is to get some backend into my application, right? I have only the front end here right now. So when it loads, you'll see this static web apps option here, and you want to add a Azure function to it. You want to add some backend code to it. For some reason, this is still loading. So you can see on 3001, my application is running. This is the basic application required, the basic landing page required for application to be running. When that is done, I assume that this is loaded. Yes. So inside static web apps, now you want to get a backend running for your application. So to do that, you see this option here, the flash option here. You go here and it would ask you whatever endpoint you want to give for your function name. So this would be your function name. Now, in my case, I simply want to, interact with the GitHub API and get a GitHub avatar running. So I'll just say get GitHub avatar. Let's say enter. It asks you which language you want to use, either TypeScript or JavaScript. Check any. I am using TypeScript in here. And when you do that, you will see that it says creating new project, new HTTP project, and it has a new file. Now let me go to the architecture of my application. And there's something new for us. So apart from our front-end code, you see there's a new folder created for us, which is API. And inside that, you have this get GitHub avatar folder inside which you have all your code required to be integrating your front-end application with the back-end one. We will look at these errors a bit later. But before that, you see this is the main file for us where you're using Azure function from this package, Azure functions. And what it's really doing is getting the name of the user, right? And then whatever query it wants to apply on your GitHub actions or GitHub avatar information. So you can write your code here in case you want to get the information of your GitHub repositories, right? So that code can be done here. When that is done, as you see, there's some error as it cannot find this Azure Functions package. So we'll quickly go to the terminal or just do it from here. So I'll open it here and clear it for once. Now I want to add a dependency, which is by doing yarn add, or you can also use npm install and then the name of the repository. In this case, it's yarn add @azure/functions. When I do that, this error should go because now I would have this dependency inside my package.json. Let's wait for that. In the meantime, now the next step for us after our backend is done should be to get the DevOps running, right? So we have the static front-end application that's running. We just saw the landing page. After this step, our backend should also be running, and this should be dealing with the GitHub avatar and getting the GitHub avatar information. And you can obviously code to integrate the GitHub avatar to be displaying on your landing page on your front-end application. Now, when this is done, you have the Azure Functions dependency in your application. This should work now. And while this works, okay, I think it's taking some time to update. Quickly happen. Let's do a thing. Let's just close the Visual Studio Code and open it again. Sometimes that works. And start. And you see your dependency, the package is here now. There's no more errors. Your backend is integrated. Your front end is done. You can obviously get the backend running and showing on the UI whatever GitHub avatar your code should be getting from your GitHub repository. The final step for you is to make a remote setup of your application on a version control. We'll do that on GitHub and then finally deploy it to Azure, right? So the first step for me is to go here. Instead of running it, I'll quickly just add it to GitHub. Let me just take GitHub git status. So I've not even initialized my repository, so get in it. Now I need to create a remote setup, right? So let me just quickly add it first. Git add all. File name exists. Okay. Git status. So before that, let's quickly add a remote origin. Now, are you aware of these new .new domains? So if I want to go to GitHub, I'll simply say repo.new instead of going to github.com / whatever name of my repository of my GitHub account is, and then click on new to create a new application. Instead of all of that, I'll just say repo.new, and that opens the new GitHub repository, and I can simply create it for myself. So easy, right? And this is just not one. I'm just curious to show you all the different .new domains. So sheet.new opens a new spreadsheet for you. And if you want to create a new design quickly, just say design.new. It will open the Canva platform to build your different designs. You have story.new to write your new article. This opens Medium. So exciting, right? And if you want to sell something or buy something, just say sell.new. This opens eBay for you. So these .new domains are doing wonders and and make it really easy for you to quickly access whatever you want to access. And okay, so this was about repo.new. You also have gist.new, which opens a new creates a new gist for you on GitHub. Anyway, so let's go back. I want to create a new repository. Let's call it ms build static web app. I think that much is enough for the name. Let's create this repository. Just create repository. Just a demo, so let's not creating it private. I want to add this remote origin. So we take git status. I want to add git remote add origin. and the name of my new repository. Now, if I say git add all, okay. Okay, I see. I think it's because of because we ran it here. So let me just kill the terminal. No. Okay, anyway, I think we can give a new name to our repository, or just commit all of what is in here. Initial. No. Another git process seems to be running in the repository. Okay. Please make sure all processes are terminated. Okay, which other process is running? This is not. Well, this is also not. Let's just kill the terminals to make sure it runs. And git ignore is important. What else do I have? Anyway, clear this. All of this should be fine. If I say git add all, this will create a problem. Index.lock file exists. What if I delete index.lock? None.log, there's no such file. Let me close the terminal from here. There's no terminal that's running for us now. Let me check here if it runs. Git status, git add all. Okay, again the same problem. I don't have any other editor also running. So
Nishu, can you try deleting it from the git folder, .git folder, that index.log?
the .git
.git folder,
folder.
yeah. I don't think so it will be visible here. You have to open the Explorer.
Yeah. Let's check in the Explorer maybe. Okay. Desktop, I'll go here. React. Let's go here inside our MS Build 2020. And okay, we don't see it here. Maybe just delete this one. I don't think that helps.
Where is the git folder?
Yeah, it's not visible in the Explorer.
MS build, yeah, hidden maybe.
Yeah. Anyway, that doesn't create any problem for us because the basic idea is to deploy it to GitHub. I mean, push our code to GitHub. When that is done, the next step is to go to our Azure portal. Now here we need to create a new resource, right? So in our resource groups, let me just go to all services first. Or in the meantime, what we can actually also do is create a new application in the meantime. npx create react app, new ms build. While this happens, let's go to in here and go to subscriptions. Now let me just search for subscriptions. Now, one very important thing for you to notice is that whatever subscription you are inside, whenever you want your GitHub integration with your Azure, right, you need to make sure that the resource provider is added. The resource, when I was doing it for the first time, I like literally struggled quite a lot with it. So inside the resource providers that you see inside here under the subscriptions, you need to make sure that your Microsoft.web provider is registered, because if it is not, your continuous integration and your deploying from Visual Studio Code onto Azure will not work, because it says it gives you a namespace error. That's because of it can't find the subscription Microsoft.web for you. Let me quickly check if our application is done. Okay, while that is not done, there's another thing for you to do now, which is, let's go in here. The final step is to deploy it, right? Until our code pushes to GitHub. In the meantime, we'll go here. We see this plus button. Let's go to this plus button when this loads. Now we're gonna do three things from our Visual Studio Code. The first is to push our code to GitHub, which will be done when we create this new application. The second step is to, which is here, choose whatever subscription we are under. I'll choose free trial. Then it asks whatever name we want to give to our static web application, right? So you saw it in the name, in the snapshot for giving a name to your Azure instance of your application. So I'm gonna call it ms build new or Goel, whatever name. Okay, so now it is asking you for a branch. Now this branch step becomes important when your code is deployed to GitHub, when your code is pushed to GitHub, right? So I'll still wait for it because this particular GitHub repository is clashing with some of the existing ones. So when this is quickly done, in the meantime, we can check where's our .git folder. Let me just search. The next step, okay, this is still going on. Let's wait for a bit. In the meantime, let's go to all the instances that I have, and I can show you one of the existing applications that's running. So for example, this one, right? Check React static and Goel. If I open this, you'll see the different locations that you choose from your Visual Studio Code, which is in this case ECUS2, and the resource group that you're given, and the URL, right? So in this case, the URL that I was showing you in the snapshot is Gentlebush. When you open this, it opens the React application for you. And yeah, so you see how simply it is deployed on Azure with just a few steps. And your application, the React application, is done. So let me close the already existing application now, just to avoid confusion, and quickly open it here. We'll just go inside this one. And this one is called new ms build, right? So I'll go inside this one now, and let's just check what all is inside this. And yeah, hopefully this doesn't give the git problem, because we have a new name for our application now. When this is done, we'll quickly go to Azure again. I have all of the extensions already in here. I'll go to this flash button to get my functions running. And yes, it is here. So let's give it the name of, again, get GitHub avatar. It's like twice for you, so you'll easily remember this. We use TypeScript. When this creates a new function and a new project for us, we will see we have all of the required code here. Again, we'll need to install the extension Azure Functions. So let's just go in here, yarn @Azure/functions. This would add the dependency for you, and this will be sorted. The next step in the meantime, when this is done, is to again push our code to GitHub. So let's just wait for this dependency to be installed. Git status, git init, git remote add origin, and the name of our repository, the new repository that we created, which in this case we'll use the same one, this one, git add all. And finally it is added, thankfully. Git commit, let's call it the initial commit. Okay, this is done, so let's call it initial commit, and all of the important things are committed. Git status, let me just push my code now. Git push origin master. This is the first step in your deployment process, which is pushing your code to GitHub. Now if you go back to GitHub, you'll see your code is here under the master branch. Works for you. That's another interesting thing that I would like to show you, this extension that I'm using. It's wide GitHub, so in case you don't like such a UX for your GitHub, GitHub portal, you can use this wide GitHub, and it widens everything for you, giving you a clearer view. So let's go back into the code, and I see that my application is now pushed to GitHub. The next step is to finally go to Azure. Click on this plus sign. This is really fast, so you must notice that we clicked on the plus sign first, not on the flash one. I choose a free trial for myself. Inside this, I want to give it some name. Let's call it MS build, or let's call it new MS build to avoid confusion again. This is the name, and now I want to choose the branch, so I'll be choosing the master branch. Now this is really important because it's asking you what is the location that you want for your application code. You want it in the root of your code, right? So slash, just the slash represents the root of your application. So I say yes. What is the location that you want for your Azure Functions code? You want under the API folder, right? So again, you would just say yes. Visual Studio Code is doing all of it for you. Now it would ask you, where do you want your deployed code to be? So you want it inside the build folder. So I just do that. Now what is the extension? What is the location that you want to choose? I'll just go with ECUS2, most used one. It's creating a new resource group, and you see it's creating a static web app. Now again, like I told you, the problem that always happens is the subscription is not registered to use the Microsoft.web namespace. So you always have to make sure that this namespace is registered in your Azure portal. So let me check in the Microsoft subscription if it works, because I have added the namespace. Check MS build. Again, master. Yes, yes, yes. And location ECUS2. If it doesn't work for you, you should check your whatever subscription that you're using, and if it's using the namespace that is required for you to use. Now it says created static check MS build because I used the other subscription. I had not registered the namespace in that. Now this is really important as it gives you the prompt to show the actions. Now when I click on this, it directs me to GitHub, giving me the status of the pipeline. Now this is the new pipeline that's created for the push, the code that I've pushed just now. And if I click on it, it will show me all the jobs that are running, the build and deploy job, and finally when the job is finished. So currently it's in the second step of the process where it's building the static web apps. It will build the whole application. And in the meantime, you can go back to Azure, go to all services. And when you go here, you should be able to see the resources that you have. The new resource is something called new MS build, check MS build. So we have it here, check MS build. And it is running for now, and the URL is Victorious Beach. Let's just open this. It will not run for now. Yeah, it says this is the default landing page. When my application and the building of the pipeline is finally done, it will show the actual application, which is the React application. So this is pretty much the whole process. Your application you'll see deployed here once your the deployment process is complete, and that is it. You might be wondering that why static web apps extension does it only for GitHub and not for Azure DevOps. Well, that's in one of the next steps. Now Microsoft wanted to do it for the platform where most of the developers are, and we obviously most of the developers are on GitHub, so they've done it for GitHub, and down the line they plan to do it for Azure DevOps as well, which would make the task really seamless for us to just integrate everything from Visual Studio Code. You don't need to go to any of the portals to get these working. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll go back to my slides now. And yeah, you'll see something like this on, instead of gentle bush, you'll see virtual. Let me see, what was that? Yeah, Victorious Beach. So on such a random name will get generated for you, and you'll see your application running there. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And I would love to welcome any questions for you. I'll share this slide, not these slides because there's not much in the slides, obviously, but this talk is recorded and you'll get access to this talk if you want to refer to it later for your own development process. And if you struggle anywhere, feel free to reach out to me and we can get this working together. I would like to thank you all a lot. And I mean, you can connect with me on Twitter or on any other platforms. Thank you very much.